Good evening to everyone, and welcome to the Latin American and Caribbean chapter of the World Association for Disaster and Emergency Medicine. My name is Dr. Darren Dukiram. I am one of the co-chairs. Today, I'm delighted to introduce our guest speaker. Jamla Rizek is a decorated emergency and disaster nurse, international speaker, and active duty nurse officer with over 15 years of frontline experience. She has responded to some of the world's most complex public health crises and disasters, bringing a global perspective on resilience, response, recovery, especially amongst vulnerable and underserved communities. Her topic today is triad systems and the role of nurses in disasters. And without further ado, I hand over to our guest speaker for this evening.
Thank you so much. And can you just confirm that you see my screen, sir?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening from wherever you all are from. If I do my job right, nobody is going to lose their head tonight. So thank you all for joining us. Just a couple of learning objectives. At the end of this presentation, I want you all to learn all of this. But before we get started, right, I just have to give you a quick disclaimer. As he mentioned, I am an active duty nurse officer. So everything that I am sharing is my own thoughts. It's my own research, my own education. Everything that you're going to see today is what I have done and put together for the purposes of this presentation. So as we get started, please go ahead and interact in this chat. I see some of you are doing that already. I do want to say that there's many different triage systems, and full disclosure, I am not going to talk about the triage systems that are specific to mental health and chemical exposures. And those are different triage systems, but I do want to mention those right up front from the beginning. Those are great, and maybe I'll get invited back. Shameless plug for another presentation, and we can talk about those. This is going to be a very interactive presentation. Again, I love how you guys are doing this already, but I want to know right from the beginning, what's your background? We don't discriminate here at WADM. We teach nurses. We are a World Association for Disaster and Emergency Medicine, but we also are very connected. We know that we can't work in silos. I am a nurse, but I have a doctorate in nursing practice. So go ahead, you should see that poll on your screen, and I want to know what your profession is. Some of you have many different hats. I'm a nurse and a paramedic. We'll give you guys a couple more seconds, and then we'll see where we're coming, where you guys are, we'll see where you guys are coming from next too. Nurse practitioner, awesome. I love how we have some active duty people here and retired people as well. Love it. Pennsylvania. Awesome. Okay, so majority of nurses, wonderful. Paramedics, love how we have some physicians, paramedics as well. Wonderful. Other. So for those of you that are other, do me a favor, put in the chat what other means. Again, we are always growing as professions, as clinicians. So I want to know where you guys are from, and then that way we can learn together. Thank you, Andrew, for doing that for us. Oh, thanks, Sven. We totally forgot about our pharmacist. How so rude of me. I'm so sorry about that. All right, so let's keep going. So one more poll. Let's go ahead, Andrew, and get that one up. I want to know where you are from, right? Let's get that out of the way. And again, we don't discriminate. We know, again, that we can't work in silos. So I forgot. Please forgive me about our pharmacists and our EMTs, and I'll probably forget some locations, but let's see where you're from. So New Zealand, you should see that poll. Andrew put it up there. So let's see where you're from. TCCC, okay, healthcare emergency policy. Jordan, welcome. Ahlan wa sahlan. Wonderful. Go ahead and mark where you guys are from. And if your country, or if it's not on that, are you guys able to see that? Go ahead and put that location. And if your country is not located, go ahead and put it right in the chat. That way we can collate that and make sure that we are more inclusive later on. Okay, Japan, awesome. I'll give you guys a few more seconds, and then I promise we're going to get to why you guys came here today, which is all to learn about triage. Or at least I think you guys did. All right. So far I see about North America, about 27%. Next in line, we have Southeast Asia, Latin America, Caribbean. So Darren, a lot of people are coming from the Latin America, but then again, a lot of people from the US. So thank you guys for coming and representing New York. All right. So let's get down and dirty to why you guys are here today. So this is a screenshot that I actually took about a month ago, August 20th. And I want to show you guys why this matters. So if you focus on this picture, really focus on this picture. This is, again, was taken on August 20th. This was when we were actually preparing for Storm Erin, right? And you can see there's a lot of little widgets, they call them. I'm actually going to share this link with you guys in the chat later on, so you guys can actually see and be interactive with it and see what storms, what disasters, everything that's happening in your location and throughout the world. But on August 20th, when I took this screenshot, this was when Erin was coming. There was something questionable happening here. There was some potential wildfires. Who knows what else was happening? So why did I ask? Why did I say this? Why did I ask where you guys were? And why did I ask what your profession was? Because in the world of disaster, we have to understand that we can't work in silos, which is what we mentioned. And we know that we have to have interoperability. What that means is we have to be able to communicate with each other. We have to know what our skill sets are. And we also have to make sure that we take a moment and understand if there are multiple disasters happening, are we speaking the same language as it pertains to disaster triage? Because again, when we talk about our disaster life cycle, we know that there can be many different disasters happening at the same time, and we have to be able to go ahead and make sure that we are prepared, not just for the disaster that's happening or going to happen, but also focusing on the next disaster and never forgetting about the recovery phase. So let's go ahead and then let's talk about disaster triage. So what is disaster triage? You've probably seen this, heard this description a million different times. So please don't take this as me speaking down to anybody. But before we go into a little bit more advanced conversations, we have to go down to the basics, right? So what is that foundation of triage? It is the basics of sorting and doing the greatest good for the greatest number of people. That's the principle of disaster triage. So if you look here, in this example right here, the difference between disaster triage and routine emergency department triage is really the number of patients that you're going to be able to treat and the number of resources you have. So for example, in the emergency department, I have many resources available. So I may have a critical patient and I'm using all of my nurses, all of my supplies. I'm literally throwing everything I have to save that patient, right? But in a disaster, I may not necessarily want to, and I don't like the word waste because there is no wasting when it comes to human life, but I may want to be a little bit more cautious in regard to the number of supplies I am putting forth in one patient. Because again, if I put forth all of my supplies on one patient, I'm not really doing the greatest good for the total number of people. Okay, I hope you guys are following me so far, because that's the basic foundation before we keep going. So I found this really interesting because I promise you I did a little bit of updated research before I shared this presentation. And again, I'll share the links so that you can all have this as well. So this is basically something that comes up in disaster topics all the time. And it's really because there are hundreds of different triage systems. And if we were to take a poll right now, but we're not gonna, I promise, Andrew doesn't have anything coming your way. But if I were gonna ask each of you, each 198, almost 200 of you right now, what triage system is the best or what do you like, each one of you would tell me something different. It's the truth. However, when it comes to accuracy, we can see that each system is a little bit different. And so why I want to talk to you guys about accuracy is because this was actually a study that was done, and they analyzed a total of 68,259 different articles that talked about triage, and they talked about the accuracy of triage. Now, I don't know how somebody could do that because my mind would just be extremely overwhelmed. I'm not going to lie to you. It would be a bit much for me. But as you can see here on the screen, and then on the bottom, the blue, the orange, the green, and the yellow. So there's your legend right there. You can see that the blue indicates that the cases were over triaged. Oranges were under triaged. Green were expected triaged, and yellow were incorrect triage. And what they did was they analyzed the START, modified START, the START and JumpSTART from 1995, which we don't use anymore, but we're going to talk about JumpSTART for pediatrics, and then combine JumpSTART and a bunch of different other kinds of triage systems. And so you can see the green was expected, and some of them did very well, and we'll talk about CareFlight shortly. But then you can see some of the other ones where they were incorrectly triaged. That's pretty scary, right? Especially when you think about in disaster triage and mass casualty incidents where, again, we're trying to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people, and many patients were under triaged and incorrectly triaged. It's kind of scary. I do see a lot of you that are from international countries. So let me be very clear. I have worked in international countries. I have deployed internationally, as Darren so graciously gave in my introduction in the beginning. However, I am not an expert. You are the experts in the countries that you work in. However, I do want to just briefly discuss different kinds of triage systems, and they're listed here on your screen. Okay, Taiwan, there was Japan, I saw Barbados, I saw Jordan, lots of people from the States. I see my friends from New York, New Jersey. I do want to talk about differently the different systems, as I mentioned, and then we're also going to talk a little bit about JumpStart, as I mentioned, because I want to talk about pediatrics and how different that is as well. So here we have JumpStart for pediatrics, START, which is typically used in mass casualty incidents. We have SALT, which is also used a lot, CareFlight, which has to do with that rapid color. And then the other regional systems in the UK, they use Triage Sieve or Triage Sort. Australia has that primary, secondary survey adaptation, and the Japan DMAT teams have their own protocols. So let's just go through some different triage systems, because in a few minutes, you guys are going to have the opportunity, and just like you did in the beginning, where Andrew is going to put up those polls, and you guys are going to go ahead and put your skills to use, and let's see how good you guys are at triaging patients. So I hope that you guys are going to be able to learn and use your knowledge from what you already have, and let's see if you're learning anything different from what we have. So START triage, I like to think of, if your patient can walk, they're a green. So this is where I usually stand on a table or a chair, and something that's going to make me really tall. And I say, if you can hear me or see me, wave my hand. I want you to come to me. And then what they'll do is they'll come to me, and I usually am standing in a place, or I'll have them come to a location, or I'll have them come to an area where somebody else is. And what I have done is I've just identified all of my patients that are green. Let me be very clear. I am not saying, and this goes for all of the triages that we're going to go through, I am not saying that any of these patients that are green do not need to be evaluated later on or reassessed, and that they may not have other injuries that need to be tended to. But right now, they are basically our walking wounded. They don't have any issues that we need to address that are life-threatening right now. So these are our walking wounded. We're going to put them off to the side. Then what we're going to do is then we're going to go ahead and assess everyone else. And then we're going to say, okay, so who's left? We're going to walk over to people, and we're going to see if people are breathing. If they are breathing, then we're going to go ahead and look at and say, okay, are they breathing over 30 respirations or under 30 respirations? If they're over 30 respirations, automatically going to make them a red. Okay. If they're breathing under 30 respirations, we want to check for a pulse. I always like to tell people, and here it says radial pulse, cap refill. I always say check a central pulse, right? Because we know sometimes our patients have a weak radial pulse, right? Or they'll have like a bounding central pulse or, no radial pulse. Always check a central pulse, whether it's carotid, whether it's femoral, check that central pulse. If they have that central pulse, go ahead and make them a red. If they don't, obviously we know that they're going to be a deceased, right? Or they're going to be an expected. We also have to follow if the patient is having any bleeding. If this patient is having any bleeding automatically, we always want to manage that hemorrhage and put a tourniquet on, right? Because this goes back to the basics. Like I said, that foundation, we have to make sure that our patients are having their bleeding controlled, put that tourniquet on. So respirations, if they have any problem with respirations, if they have any problems with perfusion, meaning their cap refill, which we briefly mentioned, but really that central pulse, they're going to be a red, or mentation. So R, respirations, P, perfusion, or M, mentation. For mentation, we simply say can or can't do. So can you follow commands? If I ask you to touch your nose or, give me a high five, can they follow commands? Can they raise their hand? Can they tell me their name? If they have any problems with that, any problems with perfusion or any problems with respirations, automatically they're going to be a red. Okay, so respirations, perfusion, mentation, they're going to be a red. Okay. Now let's go to JumpSTART triage. So with JumpSTART triage, it's very similar to what we just did, but there is just a couple of differences to consider. Now remember, pediatric patients are not young adults. We do have to go ahead and consider some things that we drill into them. So they may not be able to respond to you because, hey, we drill into their heads, stranger danger. So just think of those things as well, right? So for the pediatric patients, we're going to do the same thing. Hey, if you can hear me, if you can see me, or if you want a color, or if you want some balloons, or if you want some cake, come on over this way, right? Something that's going to draw their attention. And then they come over to you. Again, just like with the previous, with START triage, that does not mean that they won't have any injuries that may need to get addressed. They just don't have any issues right then and there. So those patients are going to be your walking wounded, they're minor, and again, they're secondary triage, you're always going to reassess. In this instance, then we're going to go ahead and check for breathing. Are they breathing spontaneously? If they are not, the key difference here between START and JumpSTART triage is that we're going to check their airway. In START triage, I'll show you. If they did not have an airway and then we reposition it and they still don't have an airway, we automatically make them a deceased. Whereas in the pediatric patient, if they do not have an airway, so we repositioned them and they don't have an airway, we don't make them a deceased, we go ahead and check for a pulse. And the main reason why we do this is because we know that kids are very, if they have a respiratory issue, it's usually cardiac in nature, right? Or if they have a cardiac issue, it's usually respiratory in nature. So this is where we always want to make sure, hey, do they have a pulse? If they do have a pulse, then we want to go ahead and give 5 rescue breaths. If we give the 5 rescue breaths, and then we'll go ahead and say, okay, did that fix the problem? Are they now breathing? We'll make them a red. If they are not breathing, then we'll go ahead and make them expectant. Okay. But if after we reposition the airway and we check for a pulse and we give them the 5 rescue breaths and they're breathing, again, we'll make them a red. But let's go back to here. Let's say that our patient is not able to walk, so we're going and we're reassessing everyone else, and they are breathing, this is where we're going to go to the RPM. But remember, these are pediatric patients, so their numbers are going to be a little bit different. So in adults, we want it greater than 30, right? Or 30 or less. Where in pediatric patients, our values are going to be 15 to 45. Okay. And remember, that can or can't do, we just have to make sure it's appropriate for the patient. So if it's a pediatric patient, they may not be able to follow commands just because of their age. In SALT triage, again, the first thing is just going to be able to sort. If there's anybody with any obvious life threats, you want to go ahead and address that first. So if somebody has an obvious hemorrhage, you go ahead and put a tourniquet on, for example, first. And then if there's anybody that has any purposeful movement, you're going to go ahead and assess them second. And then the people that are walking or are walking wounded, you're going to assess third. So this is a little bit different mentality than what our current practice was in our first two scenarios. And then this is, again, your major hemorrhage control, opening up the airway. If it's a child, if they're breathing, you're going to go ahead and move on to this part right here. If they're not, you're automatically going to make them a deceased. If they are breathing and they're following commands, if they are having any minor injuries, or if they are able to sustain their life with just minimal life-saving interventions, these are the questions that you have to ask yourself with the SALT mass casualty triage so that you can determine what color to make them. So SALT is a little bit different, and there's a little bit more that you have to go into it. But in the beginning, it's completely different than JumpSTART and START triage, because we triage those individuals that are having obvious life threats to begin with. So that mentality is a little bit different. Now we have CareFlight. So CareFlight is a little bit different as well. So CareFlight, right from the beginning, it's going back to the START and JumpSTART, where we go back to our walking. So if they're walking, it's our walking wounded, we automatically make them a green or a delayed. If they are not, we go ahead and assess their airway. If they don't have an airway, we make them a deceased. So that is similar to our START triage. And then if they do have an airway, we're going to assess their respiratory rate. Again, the values are here. If they are abnormal, we'll make them a red. If they have abnormal values, we check their perfusion. And then if they have abnormal perfusion, we don't check a mentation, we make them a red. So again, similar to the START triage, except we don't go ahead and check mentation for CareFlight. And again, all of this is just exposing you to many different kinds, not so that you guys are experts, but really just so you know the different kinds and then the role of nurses, and then we can go ahead and do some examples. So speaking of examples, I really want to overwhelm your color system here on your screen to show you the different types of triage tags. And I show this to you because, again, we all work in different environments. When I worked as a medic, when I worked as a flight nurse, when I worked in the emergency department, when I worked internationally, in each setting, we had different types of triage tags. One thing I always want to remind you of is that depending on your tag, you can't down triage, but you can always up triage. So for example, in this case, I'm just going to zoom in. In this color, in this triage tag, the lowest color is the color that your patient is. So in this case, if this patient was in front of me, I would know that this patient right here is a green. But let's say that Darren or Tara or one of my other colleagues came in and they said, well, no, Gemla, this patient is no longer a green. I just reassessed them. They would go ahead and this would be perforated and they would take this part off. And then any provider would now know that, no, this patient is now a yellow. Right, Tara? Because you know I can't triage. So this patient is now a yellow. However, if I messed up, I can't put the green triage back. Okay, guys? So you don't under triage, or you can't go back and put the triage tag back, but you can always up triage. Excuse me. So just keep those things in mind. One of the other things we do in disaster triage is we use Sharpie markers. We use that a lot. These ones are great. I like these because they come in a little plastic sleeve, if you will, and we're able to go ahead and put that. It's kind of got like a little rubber band like this, and we're able to go ahead and attach that to that person. These are great too. They're plastic, and we're able just to cut it and put it on that person as well. And then these ones are also great because they're waterproof. So just some different things to keep in mind. So lesson learned, open up your triage kits, your MCI kits. So again, I know that there are a lot of nurses, paramedics, EMTs, emergency managers, physicians, pharmacists. What is the role of you, whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you're working? Really, what I mentioned in the beginning, you may be in a role during a disaster that is not your expected role. I told you that I wear many different hats. I may not be working in the role that I normally am. I may not be a clinician. I may be a logistician, or I may be the person who is supporting the triage, or I may be the person who is running around helping with inventory. Who knows? One disaster that I was deployed to, because I have a background in pediatrics, nobody wanted to care for the patients in pediatrics, so I assessed every pediatric patient. So keep that in mind. I had a paramedic who I had a really good working relationship with. They were not comfortable with pediatrics, which was fine, but him and I worked great together. So he ended up working in my tent during that disaster, and we ended up seeing every pediatric patient. And so I say this to you because, again, you just have to be flexible during disasters. You may be in a role that you're just not used to. If you're working in an international environment, these are some things that I want to stress. You know, in some countries, one thing that I've realized is that here in the United States, you know, we have IV bags that are plastic. In other countries that I've worked in, and especially in the Middle East, the IVs are in glass bottles, right? So let's talk about what happens when there's a disaster, for example, and we saw this after Hurricane Maria and down in Puerto Rico, the IV bags. So when we talk about supply chain issues, and I know we're talking about triage, but this all relates. We had the majority of our supplies coming of IV bags coming from Puerto Rico. So we then had to identify ways that we could give IV medication because we had a scarcity, a resource scarcity, because we didn't have the IV bags anymore. We just had this issue. You guys are going to remember this, so put it in the chat, put more info, because you guys are forgetting this. But remember when we had the issue with our pediatric population, please let me know. It was last year or the year before when we didn't have the 250 and 500 cc bags. Somebody put it in the chat because you guys will remember, and we can talk about it after. But anyway, we didn't have those mini bags, and so we had to figure out how we were going to go ahead and provide that medication or those IV fluids to pediatric patients. So we have to think of supply chain issues, especially when we're talking about resource scarcity and doing the greatest good to the greatest number of people. I think it wasn't it, Tara? I can't remember what it was. It was last year, I feel like. The other thing I want to talk about is cultural sensitivity. We have to remember that our own beliefs are our own beliefs, and we may work in an environment that is completely different than ours. We have to be mindful. We have to be sensitive to the culture and the society in which we work in. We are guests in that area. It is extremely important for us to remember that the environment and the scenario, the disaster that has happened, we are there to care for them. We are not there to fix the problems of that country or that area of what it was before the disaster happened. That is something called a hero mentality, and that's not the way that it should be. At the end of the day, we're there to do the best that we can to support the individuals of that place, that country, and we just have to do the best that we can. And I see that a lot, unfortunately. We just have to support the individuals. And a lot of times we're working in an environment that's extremely unfamiliar than what we're used to. And unfortunately, we just have to assimilate and acclimate. And the best way to do that is to support the individuals that are there and ask the people that work there, that are from that area, and say, I'm not here to take over. What do you need? So if I'm going to support Darren, I'm going to say, Darren, I'm not familiar with your area, your workspace. Tell me how to best support you. I'm not going to come in and say, oh, I'm Dr. Nurse Gemla. This is what I've done. I've done X, Y, and Z. We literally have to go there and say, what works best? How can I best support you and the people in your area during this disaster? You'll find that things work so much better. Some other things that I want you all to consider before we talk about some scenarios. And again, this all relates to disaster triage because it is very overwhelming when you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And I don't say that to be insensitive in any other way, in any way, but it is very overwhelming to triage individuals that are dying. I don't want to talk about COVID, so please forgive me, but I do want to bring you back to that time when all we saw on the television was pictures of bodies that were in coolers and trailers outside. So when you think of those horrific pictures and it gives you PTSD, imagine what it's like for individuals that are now having to triage that many people during a disaster, whether it's an earthquake, a hurricane, a tsunami, or whether it is as a result of war or what's happening in the Middle East, for example, where thousands of people are dying every day. So I want you guys to consider that and then think of the impact it has on you. Because at the end of the day, I am truly blessed and humbled to come back to my house. I have running water. I have a safe place to come home to. I have a bed that I sleep in every night. Those individuals do not. And sometimes it affects the individuals doing that triage and those individuals that are doing that deployment. So please keep that in mind as well. And then last but not least, cultural considerations. Again, we briefly mentioned that as well. So before we go into our practice, I know you guys are all really excited. I feel like we are like hyping up. If you're not, then I don't know why you guys are here, but key takeaways, right? So not one size fits all during triage. I just gave you a little bit of a taste of the different types of triage systems. I'm a nurse, so I'm biased. So nurses are central to effective triage. I say this because, again, nurses wear many different hats. And again, we have to be culturally aware and adaptive because if we're not, we're going to miss things. So I want you all to go ahead if you can. We have plenty of time. Are you guys ready to do some practice? Give me a thumbs up, put a yes in the chat. I don't know, just interact somehow so I know you guys aren't falling asleep listening to me. All right, Abdullah, thank you. Come on, Jennifer, you guys ready? I'm loving it. Thanks. I'm so glad you're here, Goldie. I love it. Montrades, good to see you, darling. I love it. Evelyn, thank you guys. I'm loving this. All right, Darren, Andrew, I think we're ready to start. Everybody's still here. Nobody has fallen asleep yet. And Andrew said this already, and in case you guys did not look at the chat, all the polls are anonymous. So please feel free to put anything you want to in the chat. It's completely, or in the polls, it's completely anonymous, okay? And then if you have any questions, please feel free to put them there as well. We're gonna go ahead and answer them at the end. All right, Andrew, let's do this. All right, everybody. This is your first scenario. So a tornado has struck a small town, and there's obviously multiple victims are brought to a small community shelter for rapid triage. All right, guys, you are the nurse. I know I told you guys from the beginning. I know what you guys are, many different roles, but today you are the nurse initially assigned to SALT triage. These are your 5 patients. You should all see on your screen right now an opportunity for you to select what color you're going to make those patients. So you have 5 patients using SALT triage. Go ahead and triage. You have red, yellow, green, or black. We'll give you guys a few minutes. Tara, you're an overachiever. Go ahead. We'll give you guys a few minutes and we'll let you know when we're going to take it down. So take a few minutes, everybody. I know that there's a lot of students on here too. Don't rush. This is a learning opportunity. I appreciate you guys coming. Thank you, Tara, for bringing your students, your undergrad students here. I can't wait to meet you guys next month or the month after. For my international students, take your time. I know sometimes there's a language barrier, so please forgive me. We're here to support each other, and we'll talk about the right answers afterwards. Take your time, guys. There's a couple more. We still got time, so no worries. While you guys are doing that, Mohammed, I'm going to go ahead and answer your question live. So one of the questions that we have is, how do we deal with countries that have rules about frontline disaster support? And, do we take triage after authority is allowed to enter the country in the red zone or later? So basically the question is, do you have to wait for people to allow you into the country, or how do you cross that boundary? So I'm going to answer that question. And by the time I'm done answering that question, Andrew's going to end this poll, and then we're going to move on to other ones. So you have to make sure that you are safe and you are allowed in the country to which you are going. And so I say this to you because even though I am a disaster responder, even though my bags are packed and I'm ready to go, I do not go to a place unless I am invited. What that means is there are people that will go to places to go ahead and volunteer to deploy, and then they go to a country, but they're not welcome. And what happens is they're causing more harm and they're drawing negative attention. And what ends up happening is that other responders don't have the opportunity to come to that country. So you have to make sure that there's an appropriate connection with the authorities of that country. Even if people are dying, it's terrible, but you have to make sure that that country knows that you're coming, you're a part of an NGO or part of the WHO EMT teams or a reputable NGO or non-governmental organization, and they know that you're coming and they are allowing you to come to their country. Otherwise, unfortunately, you can't go. All right, Andrew, I think we're good to go. I'm seeing people put good, done, finished in the chat. So I think we are good. And again, guys, don't worry. There's a couple more. Awesome. Let's see those answers, Andrew. Let's see what we got. All right. So the answer to number 1 is, let's see. So I don't see what people put, Andrew, so I can't see those, but that's okay. So you guys, the answer to number 1 should be, drum roll, red. You all should have put red because their respirations are fast. They have a weak pulse. They cannot walk. They've got major bleeding. Great to see you, Noodalaine. So they are red. Excellent. Patient number 2, they are walking wounded. Bleeding is controlled, minimal. They're green. So patient number 2, that 60-year-old female, should be green, everybody. Awesome. Patient number 3 is the 10-year-old boy. He's walking, crying, no visible injuries. Patient number 3 should be green. Everybody should be with me so far. Patient number 4, 40-year-old male. Okay, so again, not breathing, and we repositioned their airway. So, excuse me, we repositioned their airway. They're still not breathing, so they're a black. They're a deceased. So patient 4 is a black, and then patient 5, pale, tachypnic, rapid pulse, abdominal injury, they're a red. Awesome. I want to know how you guys did on that one. Go ahead, Andrew. Let's look at put the other ones up. And I want to hear, you don't suck, darling. Listen, you don't suck. This is a learning opportunity. There's plenty of time. Wadham does incredible, incredible webinars. This is a great opportunity for you to learn more. And for an RN student, again, you guys are doing great. Andrew, go ahead and put the next one up. And guys, I'm going to talk to you guys about the overturned school bus. So this is a bus carrying 20 students. The bus overturned, so you are first on scene. Now remember, you are now part of the EMS, and now you're doing pediatric triage. So pediatric triage is JumpSTART. So JumpSTART triage, 5 patients. And while you guys are doing that, I'm going to address some of the questions as we go on. So let's see, yellow for number 2 as bleeding. Let's see. All right, Yulia, I hope I'm saying your name right. So the reason for number 2 was the walking wounded. The reason number 2 was a green and not a yellow was because the bleeding was controlled. So anytime you have bleeding is controlled, it's going to be a green. So that's why that was a green. So don't let that fool you. I know a lot of you guys probably put yellow for that one, and I see that. And that's okay, guys. That's why we're talking about this. Okay. I'll give you guys a couple of more minutes. We'll talk more. If you have any other questions in the chat, I'll go ahead and answer some questions if that's okay. Let's see. Let's see. Awesome. All right. I see Mahmoud's done. I see Montrey's done. So Soraya, I do agree with you. If he had lost a lot of blood, that's something that we do in the, what about the open wound? So these are great questions. And this is what we call reading into the scenario. And that is not what we want to do. So this is where we're just looking at the facts. And I remember when I was a nursing student, I did that all the time. We're just looking at the facts in front of us. So if the patient had an open wound, it would be a red, for example. If the person had bleeding and it was, we could put a tourniquet on, for example. Again, I wouldn't make them a red because the bleeding is controlled. So again, all of that depends on the triage system you're using, and it also depends on the specific type, the specific scenario. Do you need to be affiliated with an organization that is recognized by international bodies to be deployed internationally? Chris, that's a great question. Yes and no. Allow me to explain. Do you have to be? No. There are organizations that go ahead and deploy internationally. Do I recommend it? No. Allow me to tell you why. There are people that will go ahead and deploy, they'll self-deploy. Do I think it is safe? No. There are many of things that you should go ahead and make sure that you have an exit strategy, that you are going with a reputable agency that has an exit plan, that knows how to evacuate you, that provides for your shelter. Sorry, all of a sudden it started to rain and it was really loud. Forgive me. That knows how to evacuate you, that they know where you're going to be living, that they provide shelter, food, etc. These are important questions to go ahead and ask. And so if those individuals are, if that agency is not providing that information to you, then I would not deploy with them. The WHO EMT teams are phenomenal. Again, I'm not endorsing. There are many other NGOs that also go. And if you'd love to have that conversation offline, go ahead and reach out to me. Happy to connect with you. There are some other questions, but I do want to go ahead. Andrew, I think we're ready. People are saying they are done. So let's go ahead and see those answers. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the first patient. It's that 5-year-old. And again, pediatrics are a little bit hard. So right off the bat, guys, don't stress if you don't get a lot of them correct. So, right, 5-year-old female, walking, crying, minor abrasions. This patient is a green. 8-year-old male, apneic. I think I said apneic originally, right? Or they were repositioned. Oh, yes, because they were not breathing when found. So they were apneic initially, then you reposition, and then they began breathing. So this patient is a red. I'm so glad some of you guys are getting this. I love it. See, it's kicking in. The 3-year-old is going to be an immediate, so a red, because they're unresponsive and they have poor perfusion. The 6-year-old respirations are 30, great pulse, they're awake, alert. Only problem is they can't walk. This patient is going to be a yellow. And last but not least, 12-year-old helping others. Don't you love it? Only complaint is wrist pain. This is going to be a green. I love it. Hard or challenging. If you want hard or challenging, I got you. Connect with me. I'm happy to give you some harder ones. Let's go ahead and go to our last set. I'm loving you guys are getting this. This is great. So the femur fracture is not red. We'll talk about that in a second. Andrew went ahead and put that last group up. So those are on your screen. This is a multi-vehicle accident. It's on a rural highway. So it's a helicopter EMS. So this is CareFlight. So CareFlight is provided you 5 patients. You've got a few minutes. So while you guys are going ahead and doing that one, I'm going to go ahead and answer a couple more questions and talk about the femur fracture. Let's see. The femur fracture was the 6-year-old female, alert, can't walk because of the femur fracture, stable vitals. Okay, so great question. So the reason why the femur fracture, let me see who asked that. I apologize. I want to make sure I address you. George, excuse me. So George, the reason why the femur fracture was a yellow and not a red is because, yes, they have a serious injury, but let's go back to that basics, right? They have a stable airway, they are breathing, and they've got perfect circulation. It's not an open femur fracture, so they are going to be a yellow. So that's why it's a yellow, not a red. Let's see. I thought there was something else. Let's see. So Dr. Roberts, great question. If you're using a tourniquet for compression or bleeding, it's time limited. Absolutely. So current evidence-based practice states that putting a tourniquet on. So in some scenarios, we can leave tourniquets on sometimes longer than what, especially in the military, we're leaving them on for up to 6, 8, 10 hours. So great question, but that would be something we're reading into it. So if we can put a tourniquet on and it stabilizes that patient, we don't go ahead and automatically transport them. Yes, they may be a red, and I'm not saying that we wouldn't go ahead and transport them sooner than later, but that's not going to be somebody that's going to take a priority over somebody else. In regard to CS, CATT, and IITT, Cosmos, no, I am not familiar with those systems. Go ahead, share that information with me so we can all learn about them. Let's see. Salam alaikum. Triage system. Okay, so psychological distress problems. That is something that I mentioned in the beginning. There are different triage systems that I will not talk about because those are triage systems that literally, I mean, honest to God, Wadham can give like a whole nother presentation just on psychological triage systems and chemical triage systems. So unfortunately, that is not something that I'll have the opportunity to discuss in the little time that we have left, but I do want to make sure that, yes, we should be mixing that in with our basic triage that we're talking about, but I unfortunately did not do that for this presentation. I just didn't feel that I would do the time justice because it is something that's very important. I'll give you guys just a little bit left. I think a lot of you are saying you're done. All right, I think you guys are saying you're done. I think everybody is almost done. Oops, sorry, guys. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I think we're good, Andrew. I mean, I think people are saying they're done, and with the time that we have left, let's go ahead and see what the results are. All right, guys, again, this one was a little bit harder considering the fact that, again, CareFlight is a little bit different. So let's talk about the first one. So the first one is going to be that 45-year-old truck driver. So remember, this is a multi-vehicle accident, so an MVC on a rural highway. Excuse me. So you are part of the EMS team. So that first patient was unresponsive, had a respiratory rate of 8. And again, they like to give the radial pulse. So this patient had a weak radial pulse. So they are a red. Patient 2 is that 32-year-old pregnant female. This patient has abdominal pain. They're pale. They're tachypnic. In this case, they're going to be a red because there is a risk to the mother and the fetus, and they also have unstable vitals. Yes, because the respiratory strong pulse. Yes. So in this case, this patient is going to be a red as well. Yeah, I knew this one was going to be a little bit harder. The third patient is that 18-year-old male. They have lacerations, but they're superficial. They're walking. They're stable. So in this case, this is a little bit tricky. In this case, they can be delayed minimal, so a yellow or a green. It just depends. So if you put yellow or a green, yeah, I agree with you, Dr. Roberts. It really just depends because of that mechanism of injury. I don't disagree. So this is why if you put yellow or green, you could be right. So for CareFlight, they would say that the person had minor injuries, they're stable. The classification really depends on the system. So just letting you guys know, CareFlight would either say yellow or green. Okay, just FYI. 70-year-old female is moaning, trapped, weak pulse, altered level of consciousness. They're going to be a red. They've got weak pulse and sluggish pupils. So they're a red. And then the 50-year-old male's got the chest pain, shortness of breath. They got the tachypnea and that clammy skin. They are a red because they have, they're basically in shock. Yeah. So this one is completely, we don't use this one. I just like to throw this one out there because this one was a little bit different. So I see some questions in regard to the pregnancy one. So yes, pregnancy is, how do I say this? Is not a disease. I agree. When I was pregnant, it wasn't a disease at all. But the reason why the patient is a red, because you have two lives, not one. So that's why the patient is a red, because you have a risk to the mother and the fetus. So that's why it is making them a red. All right. CareFlight triage counts. So they count, yeah, they had weird for the respiratory rate. It was like 10 to 59. It was very weird. So those are all the scenarios that I have for you guys today. I hope I answered all of your questions. So my call to action for you all is, there's many different triage systems. We can talk about triage till we're blue in the face. My goal for all of you guys is to literally understand that we have to build cultural awareness. We have to work together. We have to familiarize ourselves with the different kinds of triage systems. I did want you all to stay connected with me. So thank you for engaging in this presentation. Thank you so much for the Latin community for inviting me to just speak to you all today. So thank you so much. That is how you can get a hold of me. I also put in the chat, excuse me. I also put in the chat the link to the interactive disaster site, and I'll put it down there again so that you guys can put in your information where you are and see the disasters that are happening. Other than that, I will turn it back over to our hosts. Again, thank you so much for inviting me. Darren, back over to you. And Andrew, thank you so much for coordinating the polls this evening.
Jamla, that was an incredible presentation, and I think
Oh, I
it's being
appreciate you.
reflected in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
So I will tell you, LATAC has been hosting webinars consistently for I would say a couple of years now, and that has to be the single most energetic talk that we've had since we started.
Thank you.
I really I'm very impressed, and I am thankful that you have made the time today to share this significant volume of work.
Thank you.
I think more than anything else, you're saying it in the chat, but your teaching style is very meaningful.
Thank you.
Your practical examples are obviously very well received. And I think on behalf of, WADM, I can speak on behalf of the LATAC chapter and of the organization, if Andrew will allow me to
Thank you.
say a special thanks to you for making the time and sharing with us today.
Thank you.
My second significant thanks will be to all of the participants. Very lovely to see people from all over the world. Please feel free to share your comments, give your feedback, and connect with Nirj Jamla, who I don't think people needed your QR code. The work that you do on LinkedIn speaks for itself.
Thank you.
Those who don't know you and follow you should do so for all the entertaining blogs and
Great.
updates, which I actually look forward to very much.
Thank you. Darren,
None
can
of
I just
our
say one last thing, if
Sure,
I
of
may?
course, of course.
I do just want, oh, somebody asked for my email. I'll put that in the chat. I do just want to say, I do have some colleagues, Montrey, who's a graduate, excuse me, they're both nurses, Montrey and Tara, graduate and undergraduate faculty, and their students, they encourage their students to attend. So a lot of the students that were making comments are their
Sure.
students. So
Excellent.
shout out to them and all of you students who participated tonight. Thank you guys
Yeah.
for coming.
Yeah, and
Thank
I,
you.
I did see you highlight the person who said I suck. And honestly
Your
speaking, even
student.
yeah, no, I mean the fact that you put the effort into it, ma'am,
Yes.
speaks volumes to your work in healthcare. Um,
Yes,
I was saying as well, none of our webinars would be possible without the support of Andrew Lavelle, who is
absolutely.
always working behind the scenes. Anytime you see something Wadham, Andrew is there. Andrew has supported us through thick and thin, and I know Sandra Amado, I could speak on behalf of them to say that we appreciate you very much, Andrew, for always being there for us and for all the SIGs and chapters in Wadham. I also would like to extend my thanks to the management of Wadham, to our president and to the entire board. Sandra is on the board, and we really appreciate the support that we get from Ali and everyone who constitutes the board. And a special thanks to my people from Latin America and the Caribbean. No bias at all intended, but I see people like Mr. Il Hernandez logged in today. Some of my colleagues from my hospital. Really lovely to have everyone, and we will be posting about future webinars. And Jamla, no worries, you are definitely invited back at any
Thank
point
you.
that you can make the time for us. So
Thank you.
thank you all for logging in. Look forward to receiving the emails from Andrew, and good evening. Thank you very much. Bye bye.